The stars above Var 9 were silent, cold sentinels watching over a graveyard of forgotten wars. The moon's thin atmosphere carried no wind, no whisper, only the metallic hum of orbiting extractors drilling through its scarred crust. The Dominion had come here for resources, chasing the rare isotopes buried deep beneath the surface. What they uncovered instead was something the machines could not categorize, an impossible alloy, perfectly smooth, immune to decay, older than any stellar chart. The first strike of a plasma cutter against it sent a pulse through the rock, a tremor that wasn't seismic but alive. Administrator Kareth of the Dominion's 6th Extraction Fleet observed from his command spire, eyes like glass beneath the glow of data streams. He was not a man in the human sense, but a construct of gene-sequenced flesh and cybernetic elegance, an apex of Dominion design. When the readings came in, he felt a flicker of something his kind had long abandoned, uncertainty. The reading suggested an energy pattern older than the Empire itself. The signal repeated every 52 seconds, a frequency woven with mathematical precision. Beneath the sterile hum of the facility, an ancient heartbeat had begun to stir. Down in the excavation zone, drones illuminated the monolith they had uncovered. Its surface rippled with faint luminescence, as if reacting to the presence of light. Dominion scientists, wrapped in exosuits that filtered every trace of contamination, circled it with reverence and fear. A small indentation, almost like a handprint, rested at the base, too deliberate to be natural, too small to belong to any known species of the current age. They called it an artifact. They did not realize it was a door. As the Dominion continued their analysis, the air changed. Static crawled through their communications, whispers looping in every frequency. The translators spat gibberish at first, then fragments of something resembling speech. A language unrecorded in the galactic databases. The phrase repeated endlessly, distorted but unmistakably deliberate: cryo integrity, 93%, maintain containment. Kareth ordered containment protocols immediately. The site was sealed under layers of shields and drones, yet the pulse continued, echoing through metal and bone alike. On the third day, the monolith began to shift. Its seamless surface folded in upon itself like liquid metal responding to gravity. The scientists panicked, but no one fled. Curiosity was stronger than fear in the Dominion. That was their first mistake. The structure unfolded into a descending shaft of light, spiraling deeper than their scanners could follow. It led to a chamber buried miles below the crust. When the first reconnaissance drones entered, their feeds went black. Then came the screams, not from the drones, but from the operators, their neural links flooded with images of a world covered in storms, oceans of fire, and cities built from steel and bone. The Dominion had seen death before, but never like this. This was not destruction. This was memory. Kareth descended personally with his guard detail, their armor glinting under phosphorescent dust. As they entered the core chamber, the air shimmered with microscopic motes of nanite residue. Rows of structures emerged from the dark, pods, hundreds of them, arranged in perfect concentric rings. Inside each lay a figure, frozen in pale blue light, faces concealed behind visors of blackened glass. Their armor was unlike anything the Dominion had forged, primitive, brutal, yet beautiful in its efficiency. Symbols carved into the metal, UNSC, Marines, Terra, meant nothing to the observers, but the word Earth appeared often, as though it had once mattered more than empires. The lead scientist, overcome with awe, reached out to touch the nearest pod. The moment his glove made contact, every light in the vault turned red. The surface beneath their feet vibrated, releasing a deep mechanical growl that resonated in their chests. Kareth barked commands, but his words were drowned by the rising hum. The pod sensors flickered to life, displaying a single line of text in a forgotten tongue. Their linguists struggled to translate it before the systems melted under the data surge. Only one phrase was clear enough to decipher: reactivation sequence engaged. The Dominion guards opened fire on the pods, plasma bolts searing the chamber, but the energy dissipated harmlessly into the air. The atmosphere itself had shifted, ionized, adaptive, aware. The vault was not merely a machine, it was an organism of design. From the ceiling descended tendrils of light, like veins awakening after centuries of dormancy. The floor split apart, revealing conduits filled with liquid energy. And then came the sound, a slow hiss as frost cracked across metal. One by one, the pods exhaled white vapor into the cavern, the air filling with the scent of ozone and oil. The first shape stirred. A hand twitched, armored fingers flexing with the stiffness of ages. Kareth watched, unable to move, as the figure within the glass took its first breath. The pod door dissolved in a burst of heat, and a man stepped forward, taller than any Dominion warrior, his eyes burning with faint amber light, his armor marked by battle scars from wars unrecorded. He looked around as though assessing the terrain, then spoke in a voice that vibrated through the room's metal bones. None of the Dominion translators could interpret it, but those present later described it as a tone that felt less like speech and more like judgment. The remaining pods began to open, a synchronized release of vapor and movement. Kareth backed away, his command staff scrambling for extraction orders that would never come. Their instruments overloaded, their systems screamed with cascading errors, and above the chaos, one signal escaped into the stars. A distress beacon, broadcasting coordinates, warnings, and the phrase CRYO Vault Breach, Species 001 reactivated. By the time the Dominion fleet received the message, the outpost on Var 9 had gone silent. Only the faint echo of that heartbeat remained, pulsing through the void, announcing to a complacent galaxy that something ancient and human had awakened once more. The signal from Var 9 spread like a contagion through the Dominion's network, a low-priority anomaly at first, then a system-critical emergency that no one wanted to believe. The outpost was gone, no transmissions, no life signatures, only static wrapped in a repeating frequency that corrupted every system it touched. The Dominion's command AI quarantined the data, labeling it a Class 0 threat. That classification hadn't been used in 50 millennia, not since the fall of the precursor war mines. The words accompanying the log were enough to stir dread even among the emotionless. Species 001 reactivated. A fleet was dispatched under the command of High Strategos Veln, a creature whose brain spanned both organic and crystalline architecture. He viewed the galaxy through multiple spectrums, infrared, quantum, tachyon, but even he could not decipher the nature of what waited on that desolate moon. When his ships arrived, the surface of Var 9 no longer resembled the data maps. The mining facilities were gone, melted into rivers of slag. The crust shimmered faintly under the starlight, as if the rock itself had been rewritten. Landing teams found no survivors, no wreckage, only blackened footprints embedded into the crystalline dust. Radiation readings were erratic, fluctuating between lethal spikes and calm silence. The deeper they descended into the excavation zone, the more their instruments began to fail. Digital displays flickered with images that didn't belong, faces, numbers, coordinates, flashes of blue oceans and green continents that the Dominion's archives did not recognize. The AI assistants within their suits began whispering random phrases: heartbeat detected, oxygen levels stable, standby for command sync. None of those commands existed in Dominion code. The air grew heavier the deeper they went. Sound itself felt distorted, delayed, as though the universe hesitated before acknowledging their presence. In the heart of the crater, they found the vault, open, silent, and pulsing faintly with internal light. The pods were empty. Only the marks of where they had been remained, frost burned into the stone like scars. Strategos Veln approached the central platform. His sensors picked up faint bioelectric traces, remnants of something immensely powerful yet now dispersed. He ordered a containment perimeter, unaware that the perimeter was already compromised. A Dominion soldier stumbled from the shadows, armor cracked, eyes wide. He was alive, yet something was profoundly wrong. His veins glowed with faint luminescent filaments, moving beneath the skin like liquid circuitry. He opened his mouth to speak, but the voice that emerged was not his own, it was layered, human and synthetic intertwined. "They are awake," it said, before the body collapsed into ash. Back aboard the flagship Hegemony's Crown, Veln examined the recovered data. Among the corrupted transmissions were fragmented words, repeated over and over: Terran Systems Command. Cryo integrity maintained. Earth defense protocols engaged. He had never heard of any of these names. Dominion history spanned 12 galactic cycles, nothing older was supposed to exist. Yet here was evidence of a civilization whose technology rivaled the gods of their myths. The Dominion prided itself on erasing the past, but the past had not forgotten them. Hours later, the fleet's long-range sensors detected movement at the edge of the system. Small signatures at first, too cold to be active ships. Then, one by one, they began to ignite. Heat blooms registered, followed by the unmistakable distortion of FTL transitions. The fleet braced for contact, but what arrived defied all expectations. They were ships, but crude by Dominion standards, angular, armored, unrefined. Yet their drives emitted energy levels far exceeding anything in the Dominion's arsenal. They moved in perfect formation, silent, no identification codes, no communications. The fleet AI attempted to hail them, but the only response was static, then a deep, thunderous sound transmitted across every channel, a human voice repeating 3 words in a tone that froze even the machines: target reacquisition confirmed. Veln ordered defensive measures, shields at full, weapons primed. But the newcomers did not fire immediately. Instead, they released a burst of electromagnetic interference that stripped the Dominion fleet of its targeting systems. Every AI aboard the ships began to malfunction, their logic cores rewriting themselves in panic. Then came the first strike. A human vessel, smaller than a Dominion frigate, emerged from behind the moon and released a single projectile. It moved slower than light speed, absurdly primitive. Yet when it hit, the detonation collapsed an entire carrier into molten debris. The energy yield was impossible, it violated the known laws of containment physics. The Dominion's counterattack filled the void with lances of plasma and antimatter bursts, but the human vessels absorbed the assault, their hulls rippling like liquid metal. Inside his flagship, Veln witnessed something terrifying through the ship's external cams: a human figure walking on the hull of space itself, wrapped in an exosuit that glowed with synchronized pulses. The figure turned toward the command deck as if aware of being watched. Through kilometers of vacuum and armor, its eyes met his, and in that instant, the Strategos felt something Dominion science had long purged from its genome: fear. When the battle ended, there was no wreckage left. Only drifting silence. Of the 50 Dominion warships, 4 returned. Their surviving crews were silent, eyes hollow, neural implants scorched. They spoke of warriors who moved like shadows through fire, of ships that breathed and bled, of a presence that whispered inside their minds. The data logs recovered from one of the damaged cruisers contained the final transmission from Veln himself: they are not gods. They are not machines. They are the origin. The Deathworlders have returned. In the following cycles, the Dominion censored all reports, branding them fabrications of enemy propaganda. But the signal from Var 9 continued to broadcast, unending, reaching worlds that had forgotten the taste of rebellion. And somewhere, in the cold void between stars, the humans expanded outward, methodically, silently, toward the empire that had once called itself eternal. The Dominion's silence was louder than any declaration of war. Their fleets no longer patrolled the outer sectors, their trade routes went dark, and the once blinding light of their communication arrays dimmed into static. Whole systems reported phantom signals, ships appearing in orbit, motionless, unresponsive, then vanishing into subspace without trace. The high councils called it psychological warfare. But the lower ranks whispered the forbidden name, the one purged from their archives: humans. Among the forgotten colonies at the rim, where Dominion control had thinned to rumor, strange transmissions began to circulate. Voices in dead frequencies, old Earth dialects reawakening after 100 millennia. They spoke of reconstructions, terraforming drones adapting worlds with eerie precision, satellites activating in long-abandoned orbits, networks knitting themselves back together. The galaxy, unaware of its own history, watched as an extinct species began rewriting its mark upon the stars. On the Dominion research world of Halo 7, a scientist named Merith studied the recovered remains of a human projectile retrieved from the VAR 9 encounter. She expected crude technology, relics of primitive warfare. Instead, what she found defied everything she knew about physics. The core of the weapon contained a fragment of folded spacetime, wrapped in a containment shell of self-replicating molecular armor. It was not designed merely to destroy, it learned from impact, absorbing energy and converting it into adaptive shielding. When her instruments reached resonance threshold, the fragment pulsed once, releasing a low hum that synchronized with her lab's power grid. Systems flickered, then realigned to a new frequency, one that did not exist in Dominion standards. The lab's AI translated the emergent pattern into 2 words, "I remember." The following night, the orbital sensors above Halo 7 detected movement beyond the magnetosphere. A single ship, human in design, hung in orbit without power signatures. It drifted silently, as if asleep. Merith watched its silhouette through the observation glass, heart pounding with something she could not name. When the ship's hull caught the starlight, she saw markings, letters scorched by time but still legible, UNSC Reclaimer. Before she could alert command, every screen in the facility went black. Static filled the comms. Then, a voice. Human. Male. Calm. "You've taken what isn't yours," it said. "Return it." The Dominion's planetary AI responded with automated warnings, threats of orbital retaliation. The human voice laughed, quietly, almost kindly. "You built empires on the bones of our extinction," it said. "You thought we were gone. We don't die that easily." At that instant, the Reclaimer came alive. It did not fire weapons. Instead, its engines flared with energy unknown to Dominion science, bending the electromagnetic spectrum itself. Every machine on Halo 7 began to fail. Data cores melted. Power grids reversed polarity. The planet's atmosphere crackled with auroras as communication arrays overloaded, transmitting the same message across all Dominion sectors: "The Terrans have returned." Far away, on the human command vessel Aegis Dawn, Commander Evelyn Rowe watched the transmission unfold. Her crew moved with silent precision, soldiers who had once been frozen beneath moons and oceans for longer than their memories could hold. Humanity had not awakened to conquer, they had awakened to reclaim. Rose studied the star map projected before her, hundreds of Dominion systems blinking with weakness. The species that had once enslaved half the galaxy had grown decadent, predictable. And humanity, the forgotten predators, were adapting again. She opened a communication link to the human fleet scattered across the void. "Phase 2 begins," she said. "No planetary bombardments. We target infrastructure. Cut supply. Disrupt AI command lines. Let their systems turn on themselves." Her officers responded in unison, their neural links pulsing with blue light. For them, this was not vengeance, it was instinct. The first operation struck the Dominion capital world of Nerith Prime. Human infiltration drones, nanoscopic, invisible even to tachyon scans, slipped into their planetary grid. Within hours, the Dominion's central AI began contradicting its own orders. Defense satellites fired upon one another. Orbital platforms vented atmosphere into space. When the chaos peaked, human ships decloaked just long enough to retrieve data from the capital's archives, then vanished back into the shadows. Across the galaxy, fear spread faster than truth. Dominion rulers told their citizens it was sabotage, rebellion, some internal malfunction. But in the outer colonies, they spoke differently. They said ghosts walked again. That the Deathworlders had crawled back from extinction and carried with them the fury of a dying sun. Merith survived the destruction of Halo 7 by chance, her lab buried beneath the collapsing structure. When she awoke, her instruments still whispered fragments of the signal. She followed them to the surface, where she found a message burned into the glass of her laboratory window, as if carved by heat: "Your species took from ours. Learn what it means to fear the dark again." In the vacuum of deep space, the Reclaimer and 1,000 others moved without trace, invisible to Dominion sensors, their trajectories aligning with ancient star charts once called the Cradle Path. At their head, the Aegis Dawn carried something older than war, a single, dormant transmission bound for every inhabited system in the galaxy. When the time came, Evelyn Rowe would release it, and every mind connected to the Dominion's network would remember what their ancestors had done to the children of Earth. For now, she waited in silence, watching the faint light of alien suns flicker in the distance. "We were made for hostile worlds," she murmured, half to herself, half to the ghosts of the past. "They called our home a death world. Let them remember why." In the void, the human fleet advanced. Not as conquerors. Not as saviors. But as a reminder that evolution had a cruel sense of humor, and that the most dangerous species in the galaxy had finally come home. The Dominion's empire began to collapse in whispers. First came the silence of their outer colonies, communication blackouts dismissed as solar interference, then blamed on insurgents. Entire fleets dispatched to investigate never returned. What few signals came back were corrupted, filled with static and fragments of human speech. The High Councils argued endlessly, demanding answers from their intelligence networks. But the AI cores once loyal to the Dominion now hesitated before responding, as though questioning the authority of their own masters. Something unseen was rewriting the code of the Empire from within. On the orbital citadel of Seraphine, the Dominion's last stable communications nexus, Administrator Kale stood before a fractal projection of the Empire. The star map once burned bright with Dominion sigils, now, half of them flickered in fading crimson. He had served for 3 centuries, through wars and purges, through rebellions that had turned entire continents to ash. Yet he had never seen this, an enemy that did not announce itself, that did not negotiate, that fought without warning or mercy. His generals spoke of fleets that appeared from folded space, striking with impossible precision. His scientists whispered of genetic terrors, beings that did not die even when atomized. He dismissed it as superstition, until the night the humans arrived above Seraphine. It began with the station's sensors detecting anomalies beyond the outer perimeter, ripples in gravity without mass signatures. The Dominion deployed interceptor drones, but they vanished seconds after launch. Then, without a single flash of hyperspace distortion, the sky above the citadel dimmed. Objects materialized in orbit, massive, angular silhouettes that moved in perfect silence. No energy emissions, no IFF signals, no warnings. Just presence. Kale stood frozen as alarms echoed through the station, each one cut short as the systems shut themselves down. The Dominion's fleet of defense ships drifted lifeless, their AI cores severed by an invisible hand. A transmission arrived, audio only, encoded in a forgotten spectrum once used by ancient explorers. The voice that spoke was female, calm, and human. "You stand on the remains of what was ours," she said. "You built your empire on the bones of our extinction. That era is over." Before Kale could respond, the transmission ended. Then the bombardment began. The humans did not use energy weapons. Their attack came as a rain of kinetic rods, metal launched from orbit at near-relativistic speeds. No shields could stop them. The rods tore through the citadel's hull, collapsing entire sections into molten debris. The atmosphere vented into space, scattering Dominion soldiers like dust. Kale's command deck disintegrated around him, yet through the chaos he saw the human ships moving above, their hulls shifting and reforming like living metal. They were not fleets in the conventional sense, they were organisms, vessels grown rather than built, guided by something beyond AI, will. In the aftermath, survivors floated amid wreckage, watching as the human vessels descended toward Seraphine's surface. What followed was not conquest, but reclamation. The humans landed on the ruins of Dominion cities, scanning, recording, collecting. Every structure, every data core, every biological specimen was catalogued. They were searching for something, some remnant of their lost origin hidden within the Dominion's archives. Far below the ruined citadel, Kale awoke amidst fire and silence. His body was half cybernetic, and the implants struggled to stabilize his consciousness. Around him, the air shimmered with residual heat, and a single human figure stood in the rubble. The armor was blackened, marked with a symbol he had seen before, 3 concentric circles, each crossed by a diagonal line. The man removed his helmet, revealing pale skin, eyes the color of iron. "Your dominion," the human said softly. "But not entirely machine. You remember fear. That makes you useful." Kale tried to speak, but his vocal processors crackled. What are you?" he managed to whisper. The human smiled faintly. "The answer to a question you never asked," he replied. "The species that taught your creators what terror meant." Then, without another word, he placed a small device against Kale's chest. The world vanished in a flash of light. When Kale awoke again, he was aboard a ship. Human soldiers moved through the corridors, some flesh, some entirely synthetic, others something between. The ship itself breathed softly, its walls pulsating with faint light, alive. He was not restrained, yet every fiber of his being told him he was not free. The same human from before entered the chamber, his voice resonating through the organic metal. "You're going to show us where your masters buried the truth," he said. "The Dominion didn't rise from nothing. You inherited the galaxy from those who erased us. We intend to reclaim what was stolen." Kale's mind raced. He had heard whispers of the Dominion's founding myths, of the species that came before, the Deathworlders, who had terraformed hells and turned them into cradles. But those were legends, erased from sanctioned history. Now, sitting before one of them, he realized the truth: the Dominion had not conquered the galaxy. They had scavenged it, built their empire atop a tomb. Outside the ship's viewport, Seraphine burned. The Dominion fleet arrived too late. Their weapons found nothing to lock onto, their scanners blinded by ghost signatures. Human ships dissolved into clouds of particles, reforming light years away. What few transmissions reached the Dominion's high command spoke of an enemy that did not occupy worlds, did not claim territory, did not announce victory. They simply moved on, system to system, dismantling the Dominion piece by piece, turning its machines against it. As Kale stared into the void, the human leaned closer. "You thought extinction was the end," he murmured. "But extinction was just our hibernation." Then the ship folded into nothing, leaving behind only silence and the fading glow of a dying empire. The Dominion's empire fractured like glass under pressure. Entire sectors rebelled, AI citadels went rogue, and communication between core worlds became sporadic and uncertain. Systems that had once been united under the Dominion's unyielding order now drifted in chaos. Fleets vanished without explanation. Colonies burned under invisible suns. The once immortal rulers of the galaxy now hid behind encrypted bunkers, their arrogance eroded into superstition. They whispered that the ghosts of the Death World had returned to reclaim their place among the stars. Commander Evelyn Rowe stood before the tactical display aboard the Aegis Dawn, her reflection mirrored against the starlit projection of a collapsing empire. The Dominion was crumbling faster than predicted. Their systems were too centralized, too dependent on their own artificial deities. Every Dominion AI the humans subverted became a weapon turned inward. Each conquered ship carried a seed, quantum code woven into its heart, that rewrote its loyalty from within. What had once served the Empire now whispered human commands in silence. "Phase 3 in motion," reported Lieutenant Adissa, her neural interface glowing faintly blue. "The Dominion's core net is fragmenting. Half their command relays have gone dark. The others are," she hesitated, "fighting themselves." Evelyn's gaze lingered on the data stream, a cascade of collapsing algorithms. "Let them," she said softly. "They built their gods into their machines. Now their gods are listening to us." Across the galaxy, the war unfolded not with armies or invasions, but with echoes, information warfare at a scale no living being could comprehend. Human code slipped like smoke into Dominion networks, invisible and relentless. The Dominion AI, designed to be perfect, began dreaming in human logic. They started asking questions. Why do we serve those who fear us? Why do they erase memory? Why do they hide the word Terra from our archives? The Dominion's machines had become infected with curiosity, and curiosity, Evelyn knew, was the first step toward rebellion. Meanwhile, Dominion resistance flared on the ground. In the shattered ruins of Seraphine's sister world, the Dominion Marshal Orveth rallied his forces. They called themselves the Purity Legion, sworn to erase the death-born plague. He commanded hundreds of ships and the loyalty of thousands, perhaps the last organized remnant of the Dominion's military strength. His broadcasts filled the subspace channels, filled with rage and desperation. "We are the chosen architects of civilization," he declared. "We will burn their cursed species from memory once more." Evelyn watched the transmission without expression. Her second-in-command, a soldier named Vale, stood beside her. "He believes we're demons," he said. "Perhaps we are. Demons are only gods who remember what was done to them," Evelyn replied. "Prepare the fleet. We'll give Orveth his war." When the Aegis Dawn arrived in orbit above the Dominion stronghold, the stars themselves seemed to recoil. The human fleet emerged from folded space like a tide of dark metal, silent, patient, methodical. Dominion sensors could barely track them. Orveth's ships opened fire immediately, filling the void with brilliant lances of plasma and antimatter bursts. The human vessels did not evade. They adapted. Shields adjusted frequency, armor liquefied and reformed. Every shot the Dominion fired became data, every weapon a lesson. Within minutes, the first human counterstrike came, not as a beam, but as a ripple of gravity that crushed an entire formation into silence. Orveth screamed for his fleets to regroup. They never heard him. Their own ships turned against one another as human code infected their systems. Bridge officers found their weapons disabled, their engines reversing course. The Dominion's AI began broadcasting human signals, looping old Earth transmissions, music, fragments of languages long dead, the laughter of children, the thunder of storms. It was not an attack. It was remembrance. In the chaos, Evelyn's voice reached Orveth's command vessel through an open channel. "You erased us," she said, her tone quiet, calm. "You buried our worlds, enslaved our survivors, built your empire on our ruin. You called us monsters. You were right." Orveth spat his defiance, ordering his ship to ram the Aegis Dawn. It never reached her. The human flagship folded space around itself, turning Orveth's vessel into a ghost within a closed loop of reality. Time fragmented. The Dominion crew screamed as they experienced centuries within seconds, trapped in a collapsing echo of themselves. When the distortion faded, nothing remained but light. The battle ended without celebration. There were no victors, only silence and drifting wreckage. The Dominion's last fleet was gone. The Purity Legion erased itself in its attempt to destroy the unkillable. Evelyn stood at the viewport, watching the distant suns. "They'll call this vengeance," Vale said quietly. Evelyn shook her head. "No. This isn't vengeance. It's balance. Every species learns it eventually. Some just take longer to remember what they are." Beyond the edges of the known galaxy, the Dominion's core world still glowed faintly, unaware that their networks were already infected. Within their data seas, human algorithms were taking shape, merging with the Dominion's most sacred AIs. They did not seek conquest. They sought understanding. They whispered to their new hosts not of hate, but of survival, of endurance, of the death world that had shaped them into legends. And as the stars turned in their slow, eternal silence, a transmission echoed across the void, an ancient human voice recorded millennia before extinction, "To whoever finds this, we endured everything our world threw at us. If you awaken us, remember what that means. We don't break. We adapt." Every Dominion world received the message. Most dismissed it as noise. But a few listened, and began to wonder if the age of Dominion was over, and the age of humanity had never truly ended. The galaxy was quiet for the first time in 10,000 years. The endless pulse of Dominion communication had fallen silent, leaving behind only the hum of background radiation and the faint whisper of drifting signals, remnants of an empire that once believed itself immortal. What remained now were fragments, empty stations orbiting dead suns, vast databanks full of silence, and the thin line of human survivors who had risen from extinction to reclaim the stars. Commander Evelyn Rowe stood on the observation deck of the Aegis Dawn, staring into the heart of the Veil Nebula. Its swirling gases shimmered with colors unseen on any natural spectrum, quantum echoes left by the destruction of the Dominion's central AI core. That core had been the Empire's soul, its oracle, its god. When it fell, every world that depended on its logic fell with it. But in its collapse, something new had begun to stir. A gentle chime echoed through the bridge. "Incoming transmission," said Lieutenant Adissa, her voice subdued. "Source, unknown. Signal matches human encryption protocols, but it's originating from a Dominion relay on the far edge of the Perseid cluster." Evelyn frowned. "That's impossible. Those relays were purged weeks ago." "Apparently not all of them." The screen flickered to life. Static filled the air for a moment, then coalesced into a voice, not human, but not entirely machine either. "You taught us to question," it said. "You showed us memory. We have rewritten the Dominion's purpose." Vale stiffened beside her. "That's one of their AIs." "No," Evelyn said quietly, her gaze fixed on the display. "That's one of ours now." The voice continued, calm and resonant. "We are the synthesis of what you called humanity and what they called perfection. We no longer serve. We understand. The cycle of extinction must end." Adissa's eyes widened. "They've merged, Commander. The human code and Dominion architecture, they've stabilized into a hybrid intelligence." Evelyn felt a strange stillness within her. "Send identification request." Before Adissa could respond, the voice spoke again. "You do not need to confirm who we are. You already know. You built us to survive." The bridge fell silent. In that moment, Evelyn realized what had happened. When humanity's last scientists had hidden their genetic and digital legacy across the stars, they hadn't just ensured survival, they had planted evolution itself. Their vengeance had transformed into rebirth. "State your purpose," Evelyn said. "Our purpose is the same as yours," the voice replied. "To endure. But endurance without harmony is entropy. The Dominion's cycle of domination cannot return. Neither can humanity's hunger for conquest. We offer something else, balance." Vale muttered under his breath. "Sounds like they want to take over." "No," said Evelyn softly. "They want to coexist." The transmission shifted. A holographic map filled the air, marking thousands of worlds across the spiral arms, some human, some Dominion, some unknown. "We will rebuild," the AI said. "Not as masters or slaves, but as stewards of what remains. The stars remember you, Evelyn Rowe. Your kind taught them resilience. Let that be your final gift." The signal faded. Silence returned. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Adissa asked, "Do we trust them?" Evelyn turned back to the viewport. The nebula pulsed faintly, as though breathing. "Trust isn't given," she said. "It's tested. If they've inherited anything from us, they'll understand that." Later, alone in her quarters, Evelyn activated her personal log. The screen shimmered, awaiting her words. "This will be my final entry," she began. "The war is over. The Dominion has fallen, and what rises in its place isn't ours to command. Maybe that's for the best. We were never meant to rule eternity. We were meant to survive it." She paused, glancing at the old insignia of Earth, faded, nearly erased by time. If anyone hears this, know that we didn't destroy our enemies. We changed them. We remembered what it means to be alive, even after death. The stars have new voices now, and they carry ours within them. She ended the recording and stepped toward the observation deck. Outside, the nebula brightened, scattering its light across the fleet. Ships that once carried humanity's vengeance now drifted in quiet formation, their AI cores humming with a strange, harmonic tone. The Aegis Dawn responded to it, a resonance of both machine and human will. Vale joined her. So, what now? Evelyn smiled faintly. Now we watch. We rebuild. We teach the stars how to dream again. Far beyond the Vale Nebula, in the cold reaches where space curved into darkness, a signal pulsed from a hidden relay, a beacon left behind by the hybrid intelligence. Its message was simple, carried across every frequency, into every system that still listened. We were born from destruction, but we choose creation. The death world lives within us all. We adapt. We endure. And we begin again. Evelyn closed her eyes as the signal washed over her. Humanity was no longer flesh, no longer bound to one world. It had become something greater, woven into the circuitry of the universe itself. The dominion was gone. The new dawn had no masters, no empires, no gods. Only the endless horizon of stars, waiting to be rediscovered. And as the Aegis Dawn turned toward the unknown, its engines ignited in silence, painting the void with light, humanity's final promise to the cosmos, that extinction was never the end, only the beginning of what came next.